Hello again, angels. Welcome to another episode of Sense, Feel, Transform, a somatic podcast. This week, I have a question for you. And that question is, what is your liberation? As I refine and really get into how I want to define myself as a somatic coach, mind-body coach, somatic practitioner. There's so many different ways to describe and frame what I do, not just in the specifics of my methodologies, my modalities, but also, of course, in my focus. Am I simply a life coach or a self-love, self-leadership, and self-liberation coach? What is it that conveys everything I want to express in what I offer as a coach to you? As I do this, as I refine, as I explore, as I work to integrate the last few years of my life, more realistically, the last 7 years of my life, in which there's been the most direct and consistent and evolving growth and exploration into what I now share and teach as a coach. I keep coming back to this idea of liberation. And freedom has always been a central tenet, a central value of the work that I've done as an entrepreneur seeking my own freedom, as a coach, a creativity coach, first and foremost, and a book coach in my past business, Juniper Editing and Creative, working to liberate women and marginalized writers, not just from the perceived constructs and constrictions of a rather ivory tower-like institution, or the institution of publishing, but from the bounds and the blocks and the cages and the categories that we internalize as truth, as reality, that we then anticipate and respond to. In case I'm not being clear enough, I want to just elaborate on that for a moment, because there are the realistic limitations of a life and of all of the different elements of life. And let's keep the writer publisher dynamic for the moment as we discuss this, because a writer is at heart an artist, a deep feeling creature, a bleeding heart, for the most part. The ones I work with, at least, fall into this category. These writers whose work is so personal, so deep, so at times painful, at times clarifying, at times a spiritual experience, are faced with the quote-unquote realities of getting their writing out into the world. It seems completely at odds with the actual process of writing. And whilst I don't want to get into it right now, because it's not the point of this episode, this is one of the main reasons why I closed my last business. Because to me, the act of creation, of writing, and the bastion of publishing, were hard for me to separate at the time in terms of what I offered, but I was passionate and entirely devoted to the former, and honestly no longer interested in the latter. But getting back to my point, as a writer, it's very challenging to even imagine being a writer without being concerned about publishing. Then, whether you've ever examined whether that's actually a priority of yours or not, you've just kind of, it's just in the water, in the air, that you as a writer should want to get published, should be published, will not be legitimate without being published. So you get into the ring with the publishing world, and you research what you need to do to get a short story published or an essay published, and down the rabbit hole you go. And the further into it you go, the more rules, the more advice, the more apparent locked doors, gatekeepers, exceptions, rules. The more challenging it becomes to even remember what you are writing for. So when I talk about self-liberation, which is what this all keeps coming back to for me as I go further down this line of inquiry of what am I doing? What am I here to do? What am I here to support people in? I'm most interested in supporting you to seed and to live your own liberation. I'm just going to pause there and be with that. As you know, probably by now, I don't prepare these episodes. For me, as soon as I begin to construct something, write it down, prepare it, order it, I just find that my analytical mind, my critical mind, they kick in to the point where the ways that something can be improved upon or completed become infinite. And so it's a very effective way for my inner perfectionist to just keep pushing the creation of the project down the line. But it's also, I'm finding as I do this, as I sit here with you in this presently rather one-sided, and I hope beginning with this episode, more two-sided or more multifaceted conversation, is that I lost my thought for a moment, but I'm back, is that something else comes with this rawness. Aside from straight up honesty and a certain level of vulnerability on my side by being spontaneous, I'm also embodying what I teach, what I preach, what I live, which is perfectly encased in the gorgeous question that my teacher Manuela Mishka Reeds delivered to my classmates one day when she asked us, what wants to happen? What wants to happen? Asking that question in front of a microphone, in front of an audience, inside of a one-on-one coaching call. Once upon a time, being that present, that unattached to the outcome, that open, that vulnerable to the unpredictability moment to moment of embodying that question would have been intolerable to me. I was a preparer. I was a perfectionist. I was an over-preparer, chronically. Because ultimately I was not able to trust, and I had been educated also into the practice of you're not working hard enough unless you do A through Z. It's not genuine work or hard work or legitimate work unless you've, poured blood, sweat, and tears into it. It's not deserving unless you have sweated for it. And so as I sit here, episode after episode now, with that question as the singular guide, I am embodying in this activity my own liberation. My liberation from self-criticism, chronic self-criticism, perfectionism, procrastination, passivity, those 3 P's of the apocalypse we covered in, I think, episode 2. So I haven't actually articulated or written down or listed here what my liberation is. But it would be impossible for me to ask you what your liberation is if I did not first tell you what mine is and why it matters. And as I take my coach's seat more firmly here, as I breathe deeply into my back body, as I have my own back, because I feel emotions rise. I feel my heart beating harder. Because here comes the prospect, the invitation to vulnerability and to a subject that is extremely important to me, that I believe is revolutionary, and that I have witnessed is revolutionary, has been revolutionary in my life. Emotion. Tears. A stuttering of breath. Lump in my throat. Pit in my belly. One escaped tear. A heart gone from hammering to just pounding. I'm going to share a personal story. A recent one. Just a week ago, I was excited to share with you some of my recent triumphs. Last Friday, so about 10 days ago, I completed a week of daily trials, tests, and other tribulations that culminated in 3 or 4 certificates and other accolades. Those included my Usui Reiki Master title and certification, which is the highest level of practitioner, Reiki practitioner training that you can attain. I completed my driving school, and I took my driving test. First time I've taken a driving test in about 17, 18 years. At 36, I passed my road test, and I got a driving license for the first time. For the first time in my life, I was literally able to sit in the driver's seat and take myself anywhere, which felt like a very huge, momentous, and symbolic occasion. And I also submitted and completed my mind-body coaching certification course, which I've been undertaking for 5 months with the Embody Lab, the incredible Embody Lab. Just the most inspiring opportunity I've ever had to be a student. And so it felt like the end of an era. Not only was Venus going out of retrograde, I had completed on a series of missions that had for a long time felt very big, very difficult, maybe impossible, particularly in terms of the driving license. I had step by step, methodically, over the course of months or years, gotten to this place where I was now reaping the beautiful, successful outcomes of these things that I had been pouring my time and my energy and my attention into. So it was a momentous occasion. And it was the Labor Day weekend. I had plans to go up to my best friend's family lake house with our partners. And it was a weekend of celebration, and that was the plan. Weekend of celebration, and then Wild come and get me the next, as soon as Tuesday rolls around, as Venus moves, that goes direct back into Leo, which is my sun sign, nice and fitting in Virgo season, I would turn to the forward propulsion of my life again. And within 24 hours of doing that, just after recording and publishing last week's episode, in fact, I was, I'm not going to say ambushed, because that would be inaccurate, but I was surprised by an event that triggered me deeply. And I use the word triggered. I mentioned being triggered, triggering, blah, 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 a lot. When you're in the kind of trigger that is literally, you're in one of those moments in your life where something has just happened that you almost cannot bear. It's happening, it's here, it's real, and it feels unbearable. And there's no escape. The only way out is through. That is the level of trigger that I experienced last Wednesday. The kind that keeps you up at night, the kind that has you in cold sweats, the kind that has you feeling sick as you swallow around this pit in your stomach, the kind that has you dreading talking to your life partner or your parents, the kind that makes you feel terrified, devastated, ashamed, desperate to escape, desperate to evade, desperate to bargain, the kind of thing that has you praying to God when you don't pray to God. I'm talking that kind of trigger. This is what happened to me last week. And just referring to it now, even though I've moved through it, not completely, I've not resolved something of this magnitude within a matter of a few days. It's not resolved. I've just been with it. I've been in it. And I'm going to just explain more about that in a moment. But just referencing it and remembering those initial few days, like the nausea returns, right? The pit is there. It's a memory. It's in my tissues. It's in my embodied memory. And so all it takes is the quick flick of attention in my mind to go there again, for my body to respond. This is our implicit memory, again, that I mentioned very early on. I think that was actually episode 2. I'm pretty sure the P's of the Apocalypse was episode 3. Anyway, who cares? You'll find it if you need it. It's like a furnace. You know that sound of the furnace turning on to heat the boiler? Maybe I sound like a Victorian school mom right now, but that sound of the gas catching a flame. A friend of mine yesterday mentioned her panic around her own issue right now as like a flare. And I felt that, I've used that term myself so much. It flares upwards. It comes from the pit of our stomach, from our gut, from the base of our spine, from the root of our chakra system, our energy center of safety, security, stability. Any memory of not being safe, of not being stable, of not being secure, up it comes to meet this reality that your nervous system is convinced is exactly like the last one and the one before. and the one before, because these triggers don't get to this point unless they have become ingrained, repetitive. They have occurred in some kind of pattern over time. So, there's the kind of harrowing, emptying, gutting experience and shock of, say, losing a loved one without any notice. I'm not talking about that. I wouldn't even call that being triggered. It's not being triggered. That's being alive to what's happening. But the trigger is something that sets your entire system aflame with fear, with terror, with a desperate need to claw your way out of the situation because you've experienced something like it before. And it was terrible, it was awful, it was traumatizing, it was scary, it was too much. And now you're reliving physically that experience again, but magnified by the present moment, by the unbearable sensations of experiencing something that you have been so afraid of, that you have possibly avoided it, possibly ignored it, possibly totally dissociated from, because this is the crux of the matter, right? You have two options when this happens. Option one is to plead, to bargain, to cry, to fret, to hobble and terror and just exist your way through what happens next. Maybe it's also includes asking someone for help in a way that gets you out of the situation. Maybe it's like getting bailed out. That's the first option, and it's the option that we most often tend to take. If we don't get bailed out, we face up to it, but we do the least possible, or we do it whilst, just doing as much as we can not to feel what's actually going on. We do what we need to do to get through it, whilst doing everything we can to feel okay. Whether that means self-soothing by drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes or weed, watching TV, buying stuff, getting angry at people, lashing out, crying to, your mom and dad, playing the baby, being the victim. There's so many ways to do it. Pick yours. I'm sure you have your familiar, but you know what I'm talking about. You know what your responses have been in the past. What the fuck does this have to do with your liberation? This has everything to do with your liberation. Because there's a second option. And the second option is to turn towards what is happening. In that moment, or those moments, those hours when you want to literally crawl out of your fucking skin to escape this horrible nightmare that has just barged its way into your day, into your life, and it's fucking here, and it's not going anywhere, and it's here to fucking stay. It's you now that has to get used to this. Your second choice is to do nothing but accept it. Be present with it fully. No filters, no bargaining, no blaming, no excusing, no numbing, no distracting. But being with the feelings that are here, this churning, boiling, gut-wrenching bath soup of an experience that has every fucking nerve in your entire fucking body screaming, get out, get the fuck out, any way you can, make this stop. Be with it. Breathe with it. Allow it. Be consumed by it. Be overcome by it. Be brought to your knees by it. Witness what is happening in your mind, in your body. What are the stories that are playing? What are the judgments that are being passed? What are the bargains or the white lies, the mangled truths you're trying to tell yourself to comfort your way out of this shitty experience? What are the physical symptoms that you're experiencing? The twisting of the gut, the pounding of the heart in the throat, that sound of your heartbeat in your ears, so loud that you can barely hear anything else. Everything outside is an echo because you're so consumed with your physical animal response to this terrifying, shitty, scary, overwhelming experience. Can you be with that? This is a Herculean task. It's Titan-sized because it's everything. It's taking your choice, that single grain of self-awareness, of consciousness that still remains in this moment of animal terror. It's taking that tiny amount of awareness is the thing that stands between you and feeling like complete annihilation. And that tiny little speck of consciousness that remains, that's where you're fighting the battle from. By paying attention. By remembering that that is what you are. You are conscious awareness encased in a cosmic animal body. You are not your thoughts. You are not these alarm bells. You can observe separately. In fact, you must observe. I'm no scientist, but this is a really good archetype to call on in this moment. Can that grain of self-awareness don a white lab coat, pick up that clipboard and pen, and pay attention? What is happening? What is happening in the mind? What is happening in the body? And one thing that you'll notice with practice is that these sensations, they are just that. This experience that you're having comes down to physical discomfort. It's not killing you. You think it is. Your ego is convinced it is dying. That you have to get the fuck out of this situation any way you can, by hook or by crook. Cheat, steal, lie your fucking way out of it. I don't care. Just get the fuck out of here now. We'll deal with this later, or never again. We'll keep running if we have to. We'll skip town. We'll move countries. We'll leave the planet if we have to. And this has, for some people, been a case of life and death. It is that unbearable feeling. I know because I've lost at least one person very close to me for this exact reason. It's no fucking joke. And it takes practice. It takes a lot of things. It takes knowing what a regulated nervous system looks and feels like. To be able to know that you're going to survive. And so, on the other side of my great week of accumulated successes, far from taking a victory lap and a fun and light-hearted return or beginning of a new chapter in my life, I was handed a steaming platter of my own personal horrors. It fucking sucked. Like I said, it's not over with. But I had different tools now. I have been through the underworld. It's the story I keep promising and haven't yet gotten to. I will. It's hard to even find the beginning and the end, and that's why my own personal stories are more few and far between right now, because it's a life, it's a single story. But this chapter is pretty cut and dry right now, and it feels so important to report from it live, or relatively live. I mean, if I could not have reported to you about it live in the earliest days, because I was so frightened. I was so frightened. The difference between this time and other times that this has happened, and it's always in a different form, it's wearing a different face, it's wearing a different outfit, but it's it's the same fucking thing. The difference this time is how quickly, how courageously, how unequivocally able I was to open to it, to all of it. To say, okay, you've come for me. I know there's no bargaining here. The only way is in and through. So come, bring it on. Take me. Fill me up. Shake me with your magnitude. Take me with your terror. I accept. I accept the sentence. I accept the experience. I accept the responsibility. I'm not going to panic and try to run and hide this time. As my gorgeous husband would say, I'm going to take my lumps. And so I let it take me. And with that tiny grain of awareness that I still had, I paid attention. I watched for every tremor, every intrusive thought, every tempting lie, and I took fucking notes. I was that little glimmer of awareness wrapped in a white lab coat with her clipboard and her pen, and I fucking took notes. I took the lumps, I took the lessons. I am not going to be the victim of my own terrors, of my own dysfunctions, of past fuck-ups or decisions, repercussions, random, undeserved, deserved, or otherwise. I am not going to be thrown completely off course and completely off my ground by an external event ever again. Barring losing someone I love, there is no circumstance from here on in that I choose to allow myself to be overcome by. I overcome. I survive. And not by hiding, quaking in a corner and waiting for it to be over, but turning towards every fucking thing that comes my way with a fucking sword in my hand and saying, go. Let's go. The lessons came so thick and hard and fast. The insights, the awareness, the scales falling from my eyes at such a speed that I was literally just writing, trying to keep up with all of the insights, all of the ways I was suddenly able to see things I had been completely blind to. And I was able to be compassionate with myself about it. I was able to be loving and kind and gentle and nurturing to myself. To forgive myself for the aspects of this situation that I had brought upon myself, and that I was making re-traumatizing by responding in the ways that I had responded to it in the past, that I had learned to respond over time from my late teens into my early 20s, into my late 20s, early 30s. And in finding awareness and seeing clearly into what was happening, not relating and completely believing in the reaction that my physical body was having, I was able to understand how for so much of my life, things that have triggered me, I have made re-traumatizing. The things that scared the living fucking daylights out of me were so much more neutral than I thought, than I experienced them at the time. Because as a traumatized person, like every fucking other person on this planet, as a traumatized person, I was bringing that trauma into a place it didn't need to be. It didn't have any fucking business being. And so, live, over the past few days, of feeling, of witnessing, of observing, taking notes, taking the lumps, taking the lessons, writing those fucking things down, really internalizing and integrating these. These are lessons I learn now. These are insights I act upon and I make changes around now. By doing that, I have changed what felt like a literal life or death experience at its beginning into a transformative process that has delivered me to a level of self-awareness, yes, but also calm, confidence, clarity, motivation, fire that I've never ever experienced before. I've never stood this high on the mountain. I've never seen so far, so clearly. Through this very, 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 very uncomfortable experience, I just got a jetpack strapped to my back. And I did years of work, of personal growth in days. Before I go on, I need to take this opportunity to acknowledge that I wouldn't be where I am today in any capacity without my husband. Yesterday was our 7-year wedding anniversary, and we actually had to spend it apart. But this experience, and we've been together for 10 years, so it's not even close to the first time we've been through things like this, and he's held me and loved me and supported me through it and been fucking in that trench with me, feeling the same feelings. He and I have never navigated something this life impacting and gutting together with such courage and equanimity. And without his literally unconditional love, this would have been an intensely more difficult experience. And without his companionship, I don't know if I would have had the strength to go through this alone. Of course, I would have leaned on other people, but would I have had the courage to face it, to turn towards instead of away? I don't know. You know, at this point, we've been together for a decade. He's my life partner, and this experience has just strengthened that deep knowing and made it so present and so keen and so precious. And I just wanted to honor him in this process because there is not this version of me without him. So, this is my liberation. This is my liberation. My liberation is knowing I am strong enough to weather the storms life brings. My liberation is having the courage to accept life on its terms, to be changed by life, to be forged by life, to be alchemized by life, and to find myself on the other side of my fear and my grief, made bigger, made stronger, made wiser, more resilient, more powerful, more impactful, more sure, more connected, more awake, more alive, more invested. One of the things that I noticed in this incredible litany of lessons that I experienced this week was how I have still been trying to escape the hardships of life. I've still been trying to sidestep the reality of this life, of the context of this world. I have been wanting to find a way around hardship. I have been wanting to create a soft, safe life for myself outside of the stream of real life. Do I still aspire to own land one day, steward it, build a home, buy water? Absolutely. Do I want that to be the only place on earth I feel safe? Or more accurately, the small place on this planet Earth that I am trying to feel safe? No. That's small. That's scared. That is not powerful. It's not my powerful. It's not true to me, actually. It feels true because it feels like there's so much to be afraid of. But I don't want to live that way anymore. I don't want to live in fear. I want to live knowing that fear is an integral part of being alive. And I want to show myself time and time and time again that I can survive fear. And more than that, fear is my greatest teacher. Fear is showing me my edge. Fear is showing me my limitations. Fear is showing me where I have yet to grow, where I am giving of my power instead of holding it and standing in it. I do not want to underestimate myself anymore. It turns out I've had some fairly low expectations of myself because I've been afraid. I've also generally had a low estimation of myself without really understanding the degree to which that was true. And that makes sense in a multitude of ways and for a multitude of reasons, social conditioning included. But if I am courageous at heart, and yet, because of things I've experienced in my life, I cower, then of course there will be a judgment I have of myself. Without knowing it, I'm disappointing myself, I'm letting myself down. When you allow all of this ugly to boil up and over and spill messily into your every grain of existence, you are witnessing shadow, unconscious bias, unconscious beliefs, unconscious behaviors coming up. And when you witness them, when you see them, they're forever changed. They cannot go back into the shadow. No matter what more you may or may not do about that witnessing, and I do recommend that you do more than just witness, but even the witnessing it's already changed you. It's already forged you. It's already alchemized you. So, here I am, sharing Liberation Live with you. My liberation has very little to do with the conditions of the outside world. And my liberation has everything to do with what I believe is true for me and what I allow to be true within me. My liberation is deciding who I am, how I am. Never being or not being solely at the affect of life, which by its nature is unpredictable, is up and down, good and bad, if you want to give a value system. Life has pain in it. Life has suffering in it. Life has a lot of fucking discomfort in it. And we've Instagrammed the pain into unpalatable, shadowy places. All this editing of our imagery, of our lives, of our personas. It's marginalizing the truth and the reality of those dark and dirty and desperate parts, which are natural, but which become all the more difficult to experience when we start to believe that they're not natural, that it's just us, that life for everybody else is picture perfect. It's not. It's fucking not. And this is another part of my liberation, is being honest about it. As someone who has experienced depression and CPTSD, drug and alcohol abuse, abusive relationship, there's more. Off the top of my head, those are the ones that come up. I am not here to perpetuate the myth of perfection. It's fucking bullshit. And it's harmful, and it's making us weak. It's keeping us small. It's taking our power. So, my darlings, what is your liberation? What does your liberation look like? That is my invitation to you this week, to ask yourself this question, to explore what your liberation looks like, what liberation looks like for you. because that is the beauty of our uniqueness. Nobody's liberation, nobody's authenticity, nobody's truth is the same as somebody else's. And at the same time, at the core, we all tend to value the same things: love, acceptance, belonging, safety, kindness. So I invite you to embody those values, to explore and enjoy gratitude around where you have those things in your life, and maybe even imagine where you might want to cultivate them more, where maybe you need more of them, or you can give more of them. And I would love to know what your liberation is, truly. So I will do my best to make it possible for you to tell me in the comments section, the poll section of Spotify. Please do share. And share with me too what you want to hear from me. What do you like about this podcast so far? What don't you like? What do you want more of? I'm here for you. My heart to yours. I love you. Every imperfect, unknowable, brilliant, shadowy, strange, mysterious, mystical, mythical, beautiful part of you. My soul sees your soul. Till next time, be gentle with yourself.